Without further ado, I would like to present to you Mr. Lee Miller.
All right, so let's get moving on this. I have put some material together that people who are new to this walk should be able to take something out immediately. But I have also put in some material that is for those people who have been walking this for a while. So you're going to have to be dealing with Greek, verb tenses, a variety of other things. So it's going to be a mix. So let's get started. Are we already there? I follow current events a lot, and I have some concerns. So let's do this. One of the problems that I have is I collect a lot of research and a lot of study. I never can get it all in a 45-minute presentation. So I've gone to a new plan. It's called After the Last Slide. And what that means is that I reference a lot of material. I can't give it all to you in the presentation because it would cut my presentation in half. So what I'm doing is I have the information, it's in this presentation. When I convert it to a PDF and give it to feastofsukkot.org, then you can download it and you will get all of that research information. Read it, don't read it, that's your call. But the things that are explained, I'm going to give some examples, but there'll be some other things, there'll be no examples. I'm just going to state it and move on. That research support will be after the last slide. Now, let me show you what that looks like. Oh, before I rush ahead, I always put on tap so you know what's coming. In this subject, we're going to have to deal with definitions. Also, I need to prepare you for what I'm going to be doing and how I'm going to do it. Then, so that we don't have any questions, I'm going to give some examples. This is not going to be difficult. Then we're going to work on a particular subject called women. That's always fun. All right. Yeshua and social media. Got an example. I'm going to go through some verses that deal with deception. We're going to have to talk about Matthew 24. You know we can't get away without doing that. Also, the Greek word anomia. It's going to pop up toward the end. And then I'm going to suggest that you all put on a new mindset called working for the enemy. We'll go through a few slides. And then I will summarize it. After the last slide means that references, links, and additional slides will be available. The last slide of my presentations is always the seal of the House of David School of Biblical Studies. You'll notice the bottom line says, the weight of evidence. I do that a lot, just like the gentleman said. All right, so where do we start? I'm going to start at Matthew 24:3. It says, he said on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, tell us when these things will be, what shall be the sign of thy coming, the end of the world. Oops, sorry, it's not the end of the world, it's the end of the age. You'll see a lot of that corrected in this presentation. And Yeshua answered, take heed that no man what? Thank you. There you go. So for Yeshua, when he was going to talk about the end times, the big deal was, let no man deceive you. So that's why we're going to look at this. Okay, let's do it. What is the primary subject when the end times are discussed? I would call it deception. So I want to give you a definition of deception. So I'm going to go to my go-to definition book. It's called Google. Anybody heard of that? Use that for looking up stuff. And I find that they are always very insightful. And here is their definition of deception. It's the action of deceiving someone. I was moved. Yikes. So then I went to an older version dictionary, and they said the act of causing someone to accept true as true or valid what is false or invalid. I thought that was pretty good. Pretty good. Okay? So where have we seen this before? All of you have seen this. It's called Jeremiah 16:19. Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. There's many more. I'm giving you one. So to prepare you for this presentation, number one, understand that you've probably been lied to or misled about some things. You need to get a mental reset as I give this presentation and realize that you have been deceived in the past. It has happened to every person in this room. Maybe it wasn't a religious thing, but it happens. It's just called life. So be ready. 2, It's in your best interest to examine what you believe. I would recommend sooner than later. Examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. This is an instruction from Paul. He's not just blowing some smoke. He is interested in you not being deceived. And if you examine yourselves, and what did the gentleman say? You get together, you talk about stuff, it's a midrash, it's whatever name you use for it, which I'll get into in a few minutes. The key here is that you need to talk about stuff because there's no need to separate because you disagree with me. We need to talk about it. I need to find out how you got to your conclusion. You can find out how I get to my conclusion, then we can talk. And then I can learn something, because what if I made a mistake? Well, then I'm propagating that mistake everywhere I speak, wherever it is. And so we work together as a team. Midrash is one solution. 3, quickest and most effective thing to do, determine your particular paradigm issue and compensate accordingly. That's a lot of big words in there, but it's the whole idea about how you approach the text. So if you believe in a particular doctrine, then when you are dealing with the text, when you're explaining the text, maybe you're a translator, so you're translating from Hebrew and Greek, and you translate the text, you're going to use your paradigm that lines up with your doctrine. That's a problem. I'm going to identify some, just so you can see it. Okay? Okay, first, many don't want to check their beliefs and examine the evidence. Why? I've done this with people. Here's the answer. Because they're concerned about what happens if a closely held belief is exposed as not being accurate. It's going to happen. Just get over it now. Second, some don't have a life schedule that really allows them to take the time to do that. People are busy. I'm just saying. 3, some haven't learned how to study. Now, but listen, studying is different from reading. You can read every proverb every month. That's not studying, that's reading. Studying is completely different. And by the way, I provide, and it will be available in the after the last slide section, Q16. This is where, to get a person started who does not know where to start, 16 questions to ask when you're looking at a particular verse. There it is. It's going to be at the end. All you got to do is just print it off, you're done. 4th, some don't own or have access to the resources that would facilitate their examination. Well, I agree with that. And so I'm going to make some suggestions where you can get a lot of the information. Another thing that I provide as a service is if you see a particular, let's say that I reference a journal article from 1987. Okay? Well, maybe you can't get to that. Well, I get to a lot of really crazy stuff. My library is amazing. We'll spend a lot of time on that. But if you need something, you email me, I'll see if the library's got it. If it's got it, I'll go get it, I'll send it to you. So I'm trying to put myself in a place where I can be of assistance to help you as you work toward studying. There it is. 6th, a thorough look will frequently require a historical investigation, and sometimes history is just dry or boring. Yeah. Well, history is the Bible. The Bible's history. All right, so I do history. Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, on that presentation title that was up on the screen, which was not today's presentation title, but is 2 days from today, Thursday's presentation title, I do archaeology. And is archaeology history? So, yeah, dry and boring, but just give it a shot. Finally, 7, test everything. This is another instruction from Paul, 1 Corinthians 5:21, test everything. But there's a colon after that in the text. No, not really, but in the English text, it's a colon. And then after that, it says, grasp a hold of that which is true. So there are some examples in the text that will tell you what to do. So it's not that difficult. Okay, here we go. This is one reason why having an assembly where they test and hold accountable teachers is such a blessing. Those who currently hold the office of teacher are usually in a place where they can do the necessary things and assist others with the limited time they might have. Like I said, people have life stuff going on. You're busy. You got the kids, you got the grandkids, you got to take care of the house, you got to take care of the lawn, you got your business, you got your side business. The list goes on. So if there is someone who can be of assistance to you if you decide you want to study a passage to learn more about it, That's the person in your assembly who sits in the chair, the office of teacher. And then they, because that's probably their full-time job, or maybe they're retired and that they can study 40 hours a week because they got the time, they got the resources, whatever. This is where we help the body. Everybody works together. All right, keep going. Here we are. Deception. Understand you've probably been lied to or misled. Okay, so we're going to test this. I'm always a fan of testing things. Do I have this right? Let's check this out. So the first thing I'm going to do, one of the big things going on today is artificial intelligence. And so you can download an app and you can write a new Bible. And so somebody did that. And so I'm going to share 3 verses with you that were generated from artificial intelligence. All right, here we go. They were going to write a verse about the Messiah accepting transgender people. I have the verse. Are you ready? But before we start it, I have to ask this question, and I will ask it a lot. When you hear these verses, I think there's 3, could be 4. When you hear these verses, the question I want you to ask is this a deception? Is this a deception? All right, here we go. And a woman whose heart was divided between spirit and body came before him. In quiet despair, she asked, Lord, I come to you estranged, for my spirit and body are not one. How shall I hope to enter the kingdom of God? The master looked upon her with kindness, replying, My child, blessed are those who strive for unity within themselves, for they shall know the deepest truths of my Father's creation. Be not afraid, for in the kingdom of God there is no man nor woman, as all are one in spirit. The gates of my Father's kingdom will be open for those who love and are loved, for God looks not upon the body, but upon the heart. Are we deceived by this verse? No. Why? Because the author said, I was feeling sad today, so I asked artificial intelligence to write a fake biblical passage about Jesus accepting trans people. The author is Psychological Dog 527. There's the link. So this is not a deception. He told me up front, this is a fake Bible verse. That's not a deception. Except there will be some people who will deceive themselves in being comforted by this verse. I've already read that. All right, let's keep going. Is this next verse a deception? Colossians 2, 16, 17. Many of you have probably read this. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. These are a shadow of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. This is Galatians 2, 16 and 17 from the NIV. The NIV is one of a group of popular translations from Hebrew and Greek into English. Okay, so the question is this a deception? I'm going to take out the middle section, and I'm going to put in there, therefore, do not let anyone judge except the body of the Messiah. That is a more accurate translation from the Greek. And I've put here the Scriptures 2009. That's TS 2009 if you're looking for probably the most accurate English translation. I use it from time to time. All right, these are a shadow of the things that are to come is my translation, my interpretation of the text. Where do I get that from? Well, I get it from the Greek New Testament, where here you can see verse 17. I've put into a red box ESTIN. Here it is in Greek and English, and here is Freiberg's New Testament Greek dictionary, where he says this verb is present tense. So you can't say which were a shadow of things to come. You have to say which are a shadow of things to come. Now, how could this have happened? Well, it just so happens I'm going to tell you. The editorial committee that created the translation called the NIV chose to place as the English text a translation that aligned with the committee's doctrinal position that the festivals have all been fulfilled by replacing the present tense verb with the past tense verb, and the deception was not to tell anybody, hoping no one would catch it. So now a new person, let's just say new believer, I don't want to get crazy here, but just say a person who's beginning this walk. They go pick up the NIV. It's the cheapest one to get. It reads easier than KJV. And so they're reading through this, and they're reading, all the festivals were a shadow, but not anymore. Well, then they're not coming here. That's a deception. All right? So, how did the whole thing work out? Let's review what it means that all the festivals have been fulfilled. Second coming of Christ has come. Millennial kingdom started. Adversary has been placed in a pit for 1,000 years. Many people on earth band together to attack Jerusalem. God destroyed them with fire from heaven. We saw all of this. Heaven and earth passed away. Great white throne judgments taken place. New heaven, new earth have arrived. New Jerusalem has descended from out of heaven to the new earth, and the 8th day has begun. Do you still feel that all things have been fulfilled? Usually when I ask those questions, they say, well, yeah, I see your point. I guess not everything's been fulfilled yet. But it goes in this ear, and it exits over here. I sit with pastors. I lay this out, and it is like the, deer in headlights type thing? Okay, move on to the next one. Is the next verse. It's deception. Romans 14:14. This is from the KJV. I know and am persuaded by the Lord Yeshua that there is nothing unclean of itself. But to him that esteemeth anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. That's what it says. Now, I'm going to replace the word unclean with the correct word from the Greek. Here it is. I'm persuaded that there is nothing common of itself, but to him that esteemeth anything to be common, to him it is common. We're not going to study that today. But interestingly, in the 1611 KJV, which I have here and I'm going to show you, the translators, the people that you put your faith and trust into that is going to give you an accurate rendition of the Hebrew and the Greek. These are the people you trust. You don't even know them. These people are dead. But I'm just saying, you put your trust in these people. The translators knew the Greek word was common because in the margin they said it was common. And still, in the text, which you got, they used unclean. And then within a few years after 1611, they moved the column reference out so you never knew. They deceived generations. Here is KJV 1611. You see on the left side there, it says chapter 14. Over to the right side, I have a box for verse 14. Let me zoom into that. I know and am persuaded by the Lord Jesus that there is nothing unclean. Look to the left. Look to the left. You see that cross? Looking on the side column, the cross, it says common. And so they told you what the correct thing was, and they lied about it in the actual text, attempting to deceive people. I've studied all English translations from Wycliffe up to 1611. I went through the classic version, all the way up to current Greek versions. And they had it right, year after year, decade, generation after generation. And then we get to the 1611, and they put the wrong thing in the text, but they put the correct thing in the column. It's like a conspiracy. All right, another one. This is Acts 21:20. This was a meeting. Yaakov, oh, by the way, for those who read the King James Version, his name is James, because James wanted to be in the Bible. So that's a different discussion. This is Yaakov, thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are which believe, and they are all zealous for Torah. This is 30 years down the road after the resurrection. The key word is how many thousands of Jews? Is that what the underlying Greek says? No, it says how many tens of thousands of Jews, and it's in the plural. So what that means is it's a minimum of 20 plus thousand. We're talking about a city that had 75,000. And this is before the destruction of the temple when they added another 25,000. So the goal here of the people that you trusted to write the translation you use, they wanted you to think the Jews rejected Yeshua. That is a lie. And they'll hide it every place they can. That's a deception. I told you I'd give you some examples. So the question here, thousands or tens of thousands. Now, not everything is a doctrinal position. And so I'm going to put up an example. I call it phrasing punctuation. And you have to understand, if you ever look at a Greek text, you will see that there's no punctuation. The words just run up against each other. Hebrew's got its problems too. So I wanted to show you that there is a level of importance concerning phrasing and punctuation. So let's start with this. I have got 6 words. Here they are. Without, woman, nothing, man, is, her. 6 words. Now, I have surveyed 100 people. 50 were men, 50 were women. Okay, the men said, woman without her man is nothing. Women said, woman without her man is nothing. It's all about phrasing, punctuation. It's important. Do not be deceived. All right. One final set of examples is dealing with the subject of women. If you do not want to look into this subject, please raise your hand. All right, I see about 300 hands. Too bad. We're going to do it anyway. Proverbs 31, Phoebe, Apollos, Junia. All right, Proverbs 31 is a long thing. The discussion of all of this is after the last slide. Okay, here's your sample. We're starting with the rabbis. It's only fair. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has not made me a heathen, a bondman, or a woman. Well, that's encouraging. Gee whiz. I gave you references there. Is this a first century point of view? All right. For Proverbs 31, this is from Bible Works. I have put in the verses where this falls. And what we have here is that each line starts with the letter of the Hebrew alphabet in the correct order. Acrostic, that's the term. All right, here's the highlights. This is not all of them. That will be after the last slide. But this is just to get you a flavor of my translation of the Hebrew. Do not trust me. That's what my wife says to the grandchildren. No, don't believe anything he says. Okay. She's a wife who has the trust of her husband. She demonstrates a life of consistency in doing good, in rising up while it is still night to prepare food for her family and her domestic staff. She demonstrates by a living example. She studies the real estate market, selects a piece of property, purchases it, takes the lead in preparing it to be productive by establishing a vineyard. She reaches out to meet the needs of those who are less fortunate. She also has established a distribution channel for her clothing line so that other stores can sell her merchandise. You have to realize how many centuries old this is. Her character is held in the highest regard. Her speech is filled with wisdom. She measures her words so as to express kindness versus telling the whole truth. She's an efficient executive with a well-ordered domestic staff performing the necessary things in their due time. Who is better to fill out the report card on us than our own family? Her children call her a blessing and her husband praises her. Considering the prime position of this passage in the Hebrew canon and the take note acrostic structure, that's where it has all the letters, it implies that the kind of roles it mentions for a wife and mother were not offensive to the Jews of that day or to the Almighty who inspired it to be written as Scripture. Interesting. Remember, this is my Hebrew translation. If you have a problem, there's a midrash tomorrow at 10. Okay, let's continue with this subject. Romans 16:1, I commend you unto you, Phoebe, our sister, which is a deaconon of the ecclesias. Break this into English, deaconess of the ecclesia. I have put it in Greek from Freiburg, an official. If you translate it from the masculine, you would get deacon, but this is feminine, so you get deaconess. You've probably seen that in KJV. And in Romans 12:8, it says, to the one that encourages, let them encourage. To the one that contributes to the needs of others, let them give generously. To the one that is in leadership, that's prostasis, let them govern diligently. Now, I've put, once again, I didn't use Freiburg here. I'm mixing up my Greek New Testament. This is Little and Scott, LS. Prostasis, leader, chief, president, presiding officer, one who stands before. Now, knowing that from the Greek dictionary of the first century, how is the word used in respect to Phoebe and her relationship with Paul. Romans 16:2, that you receive her in the Lord as becometh saints, that you assist her in whatsoever business she hath need of you, for she has been a prostasis of many, including me. In other words, Paul was letting people know that this woman is at this level and has been put in charge at times over Paul. And Paul's saying that in his own writing. You need to know this. You need to know this. Acts 18:24, a certain Jew named Apollos, born at Alexandria, an eloquent man, mighty in the Scriptures, came to Ephesus. The man was instructed in the way of the Lord, fervent in the Spirit, spoke and taught diligently, knowing on the baptism of John. Verse 26 is our problem verse. And he began to speak boldly in the synagogue, who, when Aquila and Priscilla had heard, they took him unto them and expounded unto him the way of God more perfectly. Okay. So far, so good. Now let's take a look at this. Guess what the problem is? It's translated incorrectly. It's an error. When you look at the Greek, Priscilla's name is first. In the Greek language, those things that were more important were put first, and those things that were less important were put later. So the correct translation should be when Priscilla and Aquila took him under the way. And so, Scripture here speaks with approval of a woman instructing Apollos in the way of God more accurately. I'm just saying, all I do is bring it to you. That's all I do. And I want to make it clear that, for the record, I could fix all of these things. I could. Because I've been in this walk for a while. I could fix all these things, but there's a problem. Okay, so I'm concerned. I have to know how to manage my person. All right. Romans 16:7, salute Andronicus and somebody, my kinsmen, my fellow prisoners, who are outstanding among the apostles. Okay, so what we got here is somebody is outstanding above the apostles. Now, what is an apostle? It's somebody who saw Yeshua while he was alive, and then they get sent out to share that with other people. No rocket science there. Okay, so the New American Standard has Junius, KJV has Junia. So the question is the second person mentioned a male or a female apostle? In Bruce Metzger, he's a Greek scholar, page 54 of his textual commentary to the United Bible Society, Greek New Testament, 1994, wrote, some members, we're talking about the editorial team that you trust for the translation, considered it unlikely that a woman would be among those called apostles, changed the accenting of the name to masculine. That's a deception. And it went from 1927 to 1994. Now I'm going to tell you some stuff about that, but I just want to make you understand that the name does not appear in masculine in history at all, but the name in feminine occurs all the time. This is historical. So once again, you need to know that. So I'm going to talk about a critical apparatus. This is advanced. One of the things to keep check of them scholarly groups, okay, is called the critical apparatus. Here's a picture. Okay, this is the United Bible Society's 3rd edition. And you'll see there's some stuff, some colors, some arrows, and a variety of stuff. And I'm going to point out just enough so you know what it's talking about. Here we go. In this particular one, you'll notice that I have, this is John, you can see up there. It's kind of hard, but the word on the right is John. 13, 14 to 25, you look at verse 18, I have highlighted, and then you look at MOU, and it has a 4. Now, what is this designed for? What happens century after century, starting in the 2nd century, and then the 3rd, then the 4th, then the 5th, archaeology discovers documents. And we have, like the last time I read, and that was a few years ago, it was over 5,000 that just deal with the books in the New Testament, the apostolic writings. 5,000. So what they do, every time they get a new one, then they figure out when it was written and is it of a certain family that exists, and then they put it in some type of dictionary type thing, which you're going to see in just a second. Let me pull this up here. That 18, now you look here, you see MOU. Okay, you see the 4, that was the footnote, and you see 18, and you see all those letters, BCL, 892, 1071. Those are documents in Greek that have been discovered from after the 2nd century. And so they go through all these documents and say, I think the preferred reading is this. So you can see it right down there. You see the arrow pointing down, it says preferred reading. But then you'll see a break, and then it says alternate reading. So somebody found a document that had a different thing. So they put it there for you. And there's an honesty factor because they use A, B, C, and D. If it's an A, the scholars are saying, we're pretty sure this is right. If it's a B, most of us are sure this is right. If it's a C, there's a few of us that think this is right. And if it's a D, we have no idea what is right. Okay, so this is a D. So you look up there, you see the 4, you see the 18, and the next character is a capital D. And they're telling you from their heart, we have no idea what we're doing. You need to know this. All right, so I'm putting some more information about this, and it's called After the Last Slide. Now, I'm going to show you the greatest deception of all. Here we are. If social media was in Yeshua's time, this is what we get. Local carpenter with extremist views continues to spread disinformation deemed harmful by religious experts. Really? All right, well, let me tell you how I feel about this. I'm going to start trusting the religious experts as soon as I fill this bowl up. All righty. So I went over these because they're in our face, hidden in plain sight. Just got to know. And if you have a person sitting in your assembly in the office of teacher, they know all of this. They've looked into it at another level of detail. So that means you can go to them and ask. That is a deal. That's a deal, okay? The following verses are not hidden. There's quite a few verses about deception, over 150. I'm going to look at 10%, and I'm going to do it in 30 seconds. No. So what is our status? Philippians, I press toward the mark of the prize of the high calling. That's what we need to be doing. All right, so buckle up. Let no man deceive himself. Do you not know that the wicked will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. 15:33, be not deceived. 11:3, I fear lest by any means as the serpent deceived Eve. See, it's happened in the past. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers. We're going to talk about that real quick. The Didache, I'm going to provide you a journal article called The Troublesome Apostles, and what happened was later in the 1st century, early 2nd century, there were apostles who were changing. They were keeping Torah, they were teaching it, then they switched. And so the Didache was written to trap them and to remove them from assemblies. I'm going to include it in after the last slide. For you, this you know, that no whoremonger, unclean person, etc., hath any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. So let no one deceive you. Also see Galatians 5:19-21 for more guidance. 2 Thessalonians, do let no man deceive you by any means. Clearly, this has the possibility of deception. Well, it's possible. For that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. Okay, and for this cause God shall send them a strong delusion. Wow, we're not there yet. That they should believe a lie. It's already happening. Evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. For there are many unruly, vain talkers, deceivers, especially those of the circumcision. This is all Paul's writings. Not giving heed to Jewish fables, commandments of men. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves. That's important. Little children, let no man deceive you. I'm repeating this text. Examine yourselves, whether you be in the faith, prove your own selves. All right, Deuteronomy. Take heed to yourselves that your heart be not deceived. It's not just in the apostolic writings, it's also in Torah. Do not let yourself be deceived. Know that you've already been deceived. It's happened. Don't let it happen anymore. Now, back to Matthew 24. Let no man deceive you. Many shall come in my name, saying, I am anointed, and shall deceive many. And then there shall be many offended. They'll betray one another, and they will hate one another. You'll recognize that. That's after the last slide. Many false prophets shall arise and deceive many. Why? Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Yeah. He that shall endure unto the end. Yeah. Therefore you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. That's the presentation I'm doing Thursday. All right, 21. Then there will be a great tribulation. Not going to be good. 22. Except those days should be shortened. There should be no flesh be saved except for the elect. If it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. If it's possible. But if you do what you need to do, it isn't going to be possible. Yes. Also, in conjunction with deception is keeping the commandments. So there's another 150 plus. I'm going to do 15, except I'm not. I'm going to put them after the last slide because you already know these. All right, so I'm going to mention also anomia in Matthew 7:23. What we have here, in that passage, it says that many shall come to me saying, Lord, Lord. And then there's a discussion to say, and we did this miracle, and we did these miracles, and we did these miracles in your name. And he said, you're committing anomia. You should look that Greek word up. It's not good. It also appears here, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Iniquity. Check out the Greek word there. Matthew 28:20, the last verse of Matthew. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. There you go. That's a task. All right, so, change of mind. Now, I want you to put on your new hat. Working for the enemy. Where will we start? We should get a list together. I always start with a list. What is the enemy's strategy? First, there needs to be a way to set aside at least some of the Torah. Because if somebody comes up and says, oh yeah, we're just getting rid of everything, y'all are going to go, no, that's a deception. So we got to get rid of a few things. All right, so how about we disregard what the Almighty has set apart for holy use? That would be interesting. Remember, you're working for the enemy. This is the list you're getting ready to submit to our adversary so he can put you to work. Put no difference between the holy and the profane. You got to figure out how to do that. What about if you put no difference between the clean and the unclean? How about cease keeping the Sabbath? We need to shut that thing down right now. Get this whole thing switched over to Sunday. Like Balaam, caused Yahweh to feel wounded and defiled, causing his wrath to fall on the children of disobedience. And here's the best one. Shut up half of all believers. That's what the women have been fighting for a long time. There's verses that say, be silent, except they don't say that. So I didn't go through all of it. I just went over some key points. It'll be after the last slide. Okay, and then, continuing working for the enemy, Daniel, your people, that's part of the prophecy. It's talking about the people, Daniel's people, in the 70th week. Now, here's the thing about the Messiah. Once again, I will address this on Thursday. Verses 135. So, think about this. What you want to do is you don't want your people to recognize Yeshua as the Messiah, so you don't allow them to read Isaiah 53. In 53:11, where it says that Yeshua is resurrected from the dead, you take that part out of the text. It's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's not in the Masoretic text. That's verse 11. And then you change the count from the time of the Persian document that says, go back and build Jerusalem and do that whole thing. We'll go through all of those details. All right, and then when you get up to the first century, the people that are a part of Israel, they're attaching themselves to Israel, they're hanging in there, they're going to synagogue, we're going to try to get rid of them. So in 85, they put together the additional line of the Amidah, so they would curse themselves, but that didn't really work out. So then the leaders of the rabbinic authorities, this is what you're going to be having them do, are going to come up with a better plan because they're hanging around and they won't leave. Then you're going to declare somebody else to be Messiah, and then you're going to have that person declare a righteous war, which requires everybody to serve, knowing that all the believers in Yeshua that are in the synagogue are not going to be able to bow the knee to this new Messiah. And so then they'll be guilty of treason, and you can put them to death, and they murdered tens of thousands. This is all history. This is historical stuff. This is what you would do if you were working for the enemy. Oh, but let's not stop there. What about the records in the 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, such as L75, P-Oxy 840, and Polygrates? These are there. We've discussed them a little bit. And they talk about what really happened in the 1st century. They talk about what was happening in the 2nd century, what was happening in the 3rd century with the believers. But we don't want anybody to know this, so nobody will read it. We will hide it, and it isn't hidden anymore. But as you're making your plan to work for the enemy, you're going to hide everything that's a piece of evidence that doesn't work for you, so you can deceive the whole world. Finally, current events move atheists into a more militant group. The atheists are coming on. There's a new atheism. You can look it up. Wiki will give you an overview. And what it does, it will show you that they've taken a stand. And so we're going to address that later this week. But I'm just saying that you need to stir this up. You need to cause unsatisfaction in churches so that people will leave and become knowns, non-religious. It's already happened. We won't even be a religious nation in 10, 15 years. No surprise. But you have to encourage the non-religious as part of your plan being working for the enemy. And finally, and there's a whole lot more we could do, you need to bring back an old friend. And the old friend to bring back is the cult of Ishtar, also known as transgenderism. So this is where you bring it all together. Then you take some surveys of the people who are leaving the church. But you don't tell them that they could solve all these problems that they just went to 1 Corinthians 11, 18 and 19, which it says, okay, so you guys disagree. Let's get together and talk about it. And then what is God will manifest itself. So in my closing slide, I want to read Ezekiel 22:26. Her priests have violated my Torah, have profaned my holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean, hid their eyes from my Sabbath, and I am profaned among them. This is a rhetorical question. Do not shout out the answer. Can you name a religion that fits this? And there were 30 minutes of silence in heaven. Okay, so my question of are we there yet? I know we're closer than some other people were, like Paul. Not that it's important. We're not told to search out to know when the end's coming. We're not told to do that. What we are told to do is to be ready and examine ourselves. And so I'm challenging you. You have everything you need, either personally or corporately, or through your connections, to do all of this. You have it all. You just have to decide how you're going to work that out with the person who sits in the office of teacher in your assembly, and then step on the accelerator and don't let up. That's the end. Oh, this is a bonus slide.